Welcome everyone to the webinar today. I'm Ben Wortham with Catholic Charities USA. And so before I hand it over, I just wanted to say, in July 2022, I had the privilege and the honor selected by Sister Donna to go to Ukraine and have a week there. It was really a life-changing experience for me. So I was really proud and happy when Sister Donna went over there. And I think, speaking on behalf of CCUSA, we're very happy she's back safe and sound and excited to learn from her today. And I'm here to be her support, tech support, whatever she needs. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks Sister for the webinar.
Well, hello everyone, and thanks to Ben for making sure that I know what I'm doing and I don't get this totally mixed up. I want to welcome our Catholic Charities Network, all of our agencies, our board members, our staff. Also welcome to all of my Adrian Dominican community and many friends and family who are joining us this afternoon. I first of all want to just say thank you to all of you for your prayers as I undertook this journey. Sharing this via webinar for me seemed to be the best way to speak about a very intense and emotional time with our Charities counterparts in Ukraine and with the many church and civic leaders that I met there, along with many people and students of the Catholic University of Lviv. Some of you might be asking, why on earth did you go to Ukraine now? This started about a year ago or more now with Archbishop Boris Gudziak, who is the Metropolitan Archbishop of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church in the United States. And I met with him and my senior team members, some of them, and 4 other Ukrainian bishops to talk about the situation in Ukraine and what Catholic Charities might be able to do to support them and to support, most specifically, the people who were leaving Ukraine. Usually it's women and children coming to the United States to have safety during the escalation of the war. During that meeting, all of us from Catholic Charities were profoundly moved by that encounter. And it culminated with the bishops asking if there might be some chance that they could actually become, their dioceses could become members of Catholic Charities USA. They would therefore be the very first Eastern Rite Catholic dioceses to join Catholic Charities. And I said, of course, we can figure that out. And thus began the journey of solidarity with them. You know, like I do, I'm sure that sometimes the Holy Spirit leads us into situations that we might never, ever have imagined ourselves getting into. And sometimes it's clearly worth the risk to reach out in compassion and support and care to people whose suffering is absolutely incomprehensible to us. To let them know, most importantly, that they're not alone, they're not forgotten, that they're cherished and they're loved. So that's why I took the chance. And I think life is short, and sometimes we just need to take some risks in service to our sisters and brothers who are really in dire straits, and this is one of them. So my purpose in traveling to Ukraine was really twofold. First of all, to get a sense of the reality of the people who are, what they're coming out of as they come to the United States. Many of them come to the United States in need of support. And then secondly was to meet with my Charitas counterparts in Ukraine, speak with them about what they're experiencing, and then concurrently, as appropriate, to engage with some of the church leaders, the priests, the clergy, and the university professors on some of the issues that they're facing relative to managing severe, massive trauma. Archbishop Boris really coordinated our time in Ukraine. I traveled with a Ukrainian priest from Philadelphia, or from Pennsylvania, not Philadelphia, Father Roman Olinik, and also Bishop John Barris, who is the Bishop of Rockville Center, New York. So those were my traveling companions. And so with that, let me just share some slides with you so you can get a sense of what this looks like. So just for some of you, so in case you don't know what the map looks like, this is a map of Ukraine, both with the Russian occupied areas, doesn't show the areas under war, which is largely the right hand side of the country. We traveled from Warsaw to, from Washington to New York to Warsaw, Poland, and then drove from Poland to Lviv. And in Lviv, to get from Warsaw to Lviv, we had to pass two borders, and then from Lviv, traveled ultimately to Kyiv and then back to Lviv. But you can see the distances there and get some sense of what what it looks like. Just in terms of the trip itself, just so you know, it's not an easy place to get to. So a week ago, Sunday, I traveled from Washington to JFK. I arrived Monday in Warsaw around 2:00 in the afternoon after at least, I don't know how many hours of flying. And then on Monday, went from the airport into a van and drove 8 hours further in the van to Lviv, which is, as you saw on the map, in western Ukraine. About an 8-hour drive. We got there about close to midnight, 11:30 p.m. on Monday, and got a few hours of sleep. And then Tuesday night we went by train from Lviv to Kyiv in an overnight train, 7-hour train ride. And so it was trains, planes, and automobiles. And 4 of the 8 nights we were spending in something other than a normal bed. So just so you have a sense of what the rigors of that trip were. These are my traveling companions. This is from left to right. That's Bishop Barris from Rockville Center. Next to him is the patriarch of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. And he welcomed us. He was not a traveling companion. He was our host in Kyiv. And then next to me on the other side is Archbishop Boris Gudziak, and then Father Roman. And so basically Bishop Barris and Archbishop Boris and Father Roman and I were the traveling companions. They were great, absolutely great. The first thing that we did, Archbishop Boris said they were presiding at the funeral of 2 young soldiers who had been killed that week, and the funeral service was held in Saints Peter and Paul Garrison Church in Lviv. That church, once upon a time, was a Jesuit church, and during the communist regime, it was used as a library. Then the Ukrainian Catholic Church took it back, and it is used now as the primary church where funerals are held for the military who've died, who are going to be buried in Lviv. So this is just a picture with the funeral bier. There are 2 funeral biers waiting for the caskets. And then those are the presiders at the funeral, and they wanted me to come up and stand with them. So I'm in the middle of all these beautifully ornately dressed clerics. But it was very solemn. And when you go into a church for a funeral, there are no pews. People in the Eastern Church, they stand through the entire liturgy. And when I came in, I was struck by the fact that there were probably 400 or so people just standing in absolute silence in the church, waiting for the bodies to be brought in, and then stood through an hour-and-a-half service. This is the young soldiers bringing their comrades into the church. This was the procession after the service, leading the bodies out to the hearse, where they will be taken to the newly established cemetery, where they're burying upwards of 300 people every week. The priests wanted me to join the procession, the funeral procession, side next to the movement of the caskets into the hearse. Following the funeral, we went to the military rehabilitation hospital, which is about 1,000-bed hospital, where most of the men who are in there have had serious spinal cord injuries and have had or had legs that had been legs or other limbs just blown up by mines and other kinds of war injuries. I did have a chance, didn't take pictures, of course, but I did have a chance to speak with a couple of the patients there, and also had an opportunity to meet with the doctor in charge of the hospital. They are in real need of supplies and equipment. They prepared a list for me to take back with me for ways that maybe there would be healthcare providers in the United States who might want to help them with supplies. The problem was that the list they gave me was all in Ukrainian, so it is currently being translated as we speak today. That's on the far right is the young doctor who's in charge of the hospital. Then we went to the train station at about 11 o'clock at night, boarded a train to Kyiv. Of course, I was quite apprehensive because, first of all, I have not spent the night on a train in a country in a war zone. And so myself and Bishop Barris were checking with each other because we would hear the train would stop and we'd hear some noise, and the two of us thought, well, what is this? Is this normal or is this not normal? And so it was great that we were at least together to talk about it, and we were fine. We got there in the morning, and I can't say that we slept a whole lot, but we were there. And then the first visit that we made was to the Apostolic Nuncio. He is a Lithuanian archbishop, and he greeted us. He was one of the very few diplomats who has remained in Kyiv, and remained in Kyiv even at the beginning of the war a year ago. He was showing me a Bible, a children's Bible that had been rescued, or they picked it up after the bombing of Mariupol, and he has that in his office. It's charred, and he kind of keeps it there as a reminder for him to be praying, and for all of us to pray for the children that were killed in Mariupol. So, you can tell he's a very tall man. The bishop, Bishop Barris and Archbishop Gudziak are each over 6'1" or 2", and the nuncio is almost like 6'7" or something. So, but absolutely incredibly dedicated man who has opened his home for people fleeing who needed to be in a safe place. He's done that repeatedly and continues to do so as the situation changes. Then we went to visit Caritas Ukraine in Kyiv. Caritas Ukraine is the equivalent of Catholic Charities USA and Catholic Charities in the United States. So they're our sister organization. This is the entrance into their service center. And what's happening there is that there are literally tens of thousands of people who have been internally displaced, and they had to flee from eastern Ukraine, where the Russians are advancing, and they moved to Kyiv, and then many of them moved further west into areas around Lviv, and some go out of the country. So this would be their first stop, where they've had to just leave everything. And Caritas Ukraine is supplying the same kinds of things that Catholic Charities is providing at our southern border with our migrants coming up through the south: the blankets, the clothing, clean clothing, bedding, toiletries, etc. But they're doing it with just thousands of people every day. These are directors from Caritas Ukraine standing with me and Bishop Barris. There are two Caritases in Ukraine. One is Caritas Ukraine, and the other one is Caritas Spes. And one is from the Latin Church, and one is from the Eastern Rite Church. But they work together and trying to respond to the needs. And this is the typical storage area where they're trying to, they invite people to come in and get their supplies, get what they need, and provide some kind of housing. One thing that the Ukrainian people are very proud of is that they don't have people living on the streets. The Ukrainian people themselves have opened their homes, have welcomed the internally displaced people into their homes. The pastors of the parishes have done the same. Most of the priests are married and have children, and they are extremely, between the funerals and the service needs of the people, they are very, very tired, and the Caritas staffs are very tired as well. And I know that the Catholic Charities folks who work along our borders can well understand that feeling of just being completely overwhelmed by need. And Catholic Charities USA, we sent hundreds of our purple Catholic Charities fleece blankets over to them, and just made it as a gesture, a donation and solidarity to them from us. That's the staff of Caritas, Caritas Kyiv, and lots of piles of things. From there, we went to, some of you will recall that when the war began, there was a large massacre in a town called Bucha. There's been a documentary that was shown on 60 Minutes. The woman who actually produced the documentary for CBS is in the tan coat standing with us in front of the church. That church is a Ukrainian Orthodox church. And when the Russians gunned down the civilians in the street, the bodies were taken to this church. And this would have been in February, a year ago, February, beginning of March. And they were buried in mass graves behind the church. People carried the bodies to the church and placed them in these mass graves. And I'll show you that during Holy Week, the bodies were exhumed because the Russians had been repelled, the bodies were exhumed and were given back to the families and were identified. And this is a photograph of the exhumation of one of the people who had been buried, and it went viral on Ukraine social networks, and they call it the crucifixion of Ukraine. Because of it was in Holy Week. So you can get a sense of kind of the horror of the entire situation. This is the journalist Sophia, and this is inside the church. And this is a photographic record of what happened in Bucha. Unfortunately, it was so overwhelming to me that they were trying to get a recording of me, and then with Bishop Barris. Bishop Barris did better than I did. I really couldn't talk. It was too horrific to look at this, to see what was happening, and know that it was absolutely senseless, and that all of these people had been murdered outright. Just there's pictures of a man in his 60s, probably, on his bike, walking. His dog was running along next to him on his leash. The man was gunned down and dead in the street. And there's a picture of the man with the dog just sitting by his side. And I really could not be interviewed. I couldn't handle it. I apologized and left it at that. But one of the things I would share is that Bucha is a lovely small suburban town of Kiev, and it would remind you, for my Adrian community, it would remind you of a town that maybe looks like Tecumseh, and the town next to it is Irpin. And then if you would imagine that, okay, in Bucha, the people were all gunned down, their homes were left intact, and their beautiful homes. It was a lovely place for people to raise their families. The Russians came in and just shot everybody for no reason. And then they moved on to the next town, which would be a town that would remind you of Adrian, more, not quite as fancy, a lot of mall kind of things and shops that were just markets. In that town, the Russians were very angry, and they just shot everything up, and the people were not massacred, but the whole town was basically destroyed. This is in Irpin. This is the priest who is the pastor of the church there, showing me pictures of the houses before and after the Russians came in and destroyed everything. This is he gave me and Bishop Barris, he came up to us with a little box that had velvet lining in it, felt or velvet, I couldn't really tell. And it was filled with little pieces of shrapnel. And this shrapnel was taken out of the bodies of people that had been shot by the Russians, but survived. So the surgeons removed the shrapnel, and he gave it to each of us, gave us each a piece as a reminder to pray for the people who are suffering in Ukraine. So we each took that home as a very treasured gift. And then, as you would have it, by chance, in Irpin, and you can see the blasted out building behind us, I run into one of our Dominican friars, which was really dear. He happened to be there on an interfaith solidarity trip. He's from Poland. and was thrilled to meet another Dominican, and he speaks perfect English. So we had a quick visit, but it was fun to see him. And now this is, we had been in Bucha and Irpin, and then went back into the city and met with a woman whose name was Tyra. She is famous in their country, in Ukraine, because she's a medic. She was delivering medical supplies to Mariupol at the beginning of the war. She was taken hostage by the Russians and was imprisoned. They thought she was a Nazi. That use of that term is just really very, very weird and very disconcerting, and wanted her to confess that she was a Nazi, and she of course wouldn't. And as a result, they imprisoned her and took her to one of the camps and held her for 94 days. She said that she was tortured in ways that every way that you could imagine, except that she was not raped. She's very tough. She's a very strong woman, and she was able to withstand the torture, and somehow they got tired of her because she wasn't giving in. And she said, go ahead and shoot me, kill me, because I can't do anything more. And they finally let her go. But there is a story, if you Google, for those of you that have access to computers, if you Google medic taken hostage in Ukraine, you'll see her story, and she does interviews on YouTube. And that's just another picture of us with her. So that was a very, very difficult day, very emotional, listening to her, and as a follow-up to what had happened in Bucha and Irpin, and then what happened to her as someone who had been severely tortured. Then this I put in there because I just thought it's just sort of an amazing picture. In the morning, after we went to sleep, and the next morning we were going to mass, and this is one of the bishops in Kyiv in the center. He is a Redemptorist priest who was part of, he was a priest in the underground church during communism. And the priest on the other side of me is another bishop, and he's also a Redemptorist. And the two of them are basically leaders in the local church in Kyiv. And so they invited us to mass, and of course it's the Eastern Rite. And it's done in Ukrainian, so I couldn't follow it, but I said, I'll just be here and praying with you. So, and it was very important, I think, each day that we had time to pray, even though language certainly was an issue for me, but you know what you're doing, what you're praying about when you're in that situation. Then we went back to Lviv. We took the night train back to Lviv. There was an escalation in the war at that, by Thursday it was starting, last Thursday, so it would have been a week ago. And we took the night train back, and then had time to meet with students at the university. And at the university, there is a place called Emmaus House. It's a large community of special needs young adults who are on the university campus, and they interact with the students at the university, because Archbishop Boris is the president of the Catholic University of Lviv, and his vision is that people with special needs and people that don't have special needs, we're all brothers and sisters, and that we need to know each other, befriend each other, and there shouldn't be distinctions or separate ways of engaging each other. So he's made it a real practice to include the L'Arche Community Emmaus Center right in the heart of the university. So the students and the special needs young people all get to know one another, and it's quite impressive. So this was having breakfast with them. The community there made a very special, I would think it was a dessert, they called it breakfast, but they made it themselves. So it's very sweet, and we shared a meal with them, and it was lovely to be with them. Then I had a meeting with the mayor of Lviv. The mayor is sitting next to Bishop Barris, and next to the computer screen. He had this appointment scheduled with us, but that morning the sirens started. So when we got to the offices, the offices of the mayor, we were immediately ushered down to the bomb shelter. And we had our meeting in the bomb shelter with him. We were under alert for about 2 hours in the bomb shelter. People in Ukraine become quite used to the sirens going off, and everybody moves to the bomb shelters. So he is running, they're planning for the future of Ukraine, and he was sharing with us this project called Unbroken, which is going to be like a whole complex of services to care for the aftermath of the war. There'll be mental health facilities, there'll be housing facilities, healthcare clinics, all kinds of services there to help their people heal. Every place that I went, I listened to stories of how traumatized everybody is. Even the patriarch said, I send out a text or an email or a voice message every day to the people in the country to let them know that I'm praying for them. And he said, some days I don't even know what to say. I don't know how to speak. I don't know what to say. Everyone is traumatized. And this mayor is planning really for the healing of his country, and trying to really prepare for the time when they'll be able to move forward. So it's a big project. It's a multi-million-dollar project that he was sharing with us. That's my meeting him in the bomb shelter. Bomb shelter looks like the basement of a medieval castle. It's pretty amazing. That's just inside the shelter. So we started most of all day Friday, basically. We started in that bomb shelter, got back to the university, more sirens went off. This is the bomb shelter under the university. The whole underground of the university is a giant connected bomb shelter. So when the sirens start, the entire university goes underground. Classes continue, professors continue lecturing, students are studying, This is just part of life. They go down there and life continues. So I said to them, I said, well, I've heard of an underground church, but I've never heard of an underground university. And that's basically what's going on there. And they take it in stride. For me, it was very disconcerting because I've not been in that kind of situation before. So those are just some pictures that I wanted to share with you, because I think sometimes it really helps when you can see see what it looks like, see the people. What would I say about the people? They're extraordinarily resilient. The young people are taking enormous leadership roles in all areas of the society and the civic society and in the church. They are fiercely patriotic, and they all readily admit being deeply traumatized. And we're so appreciative of the fact that we would come and be with them, and that we would be with them through the missiles coming in and everything else, that we were with them and doing the best we could to just stand in solidarity with them. One of the things that we're going to be doing, I'm going to be doing, is trying to develop some materials that can be used and do some training, probably via Zooms or however, in trauma, managing trauma, largely for the leaders and for students, so that they would have the tools to work in the healing processes in their own communities in Ukraine. So that's work to be done down the road, but they are extraordinarily powerfully strong and faithful people. And I think anything we can do to continue to hold them in prayer, to help them. I know our Catholic Charities folks will be doing everything possible to help the women and children heal from the trauma. It's very difficult because their husbands and their brothers, all the men, are staying in Ukraine to fight. So the people that we're helping really are the moms and the children. And I know that all of our agencies that will be receiving them will be doing such wonderful work to help them heal as best they can. Mostly they need our friendship. They need to know that they are not standing alone. They need to know that we care about them, and we'll do whatever is possible for us to help them. So I think there are some questions, and I'm going to turn this back to Ben and stop sharing this. Okay, Ben. You're muted, Ben.
You think I learned by now. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, sister. So we welcome your questions now. At the bottom of your screen, you have a little Q&A box. We already have a couple of questions, but feel free to put in your question, and I'll read them out for sister. So the first one that came through, Sister Donna, is thank you for your efforts, and how can we donate?
Well, it depends on where you want to donate. I mean, certainly if you're interested in donating in this country, you can donate through Catholic Charities USA, and we'll make sure that it gets to our agencies that are caring for the people who are here as under the special category of refugee. And we can do that. If you're interested in donating to help the cause in Ukraine, my best advice, the simplest thing to do, would be to donate through Catholic Relief Services. They're our sister agency here in the US. They're my partner in Charities USA, and they will assist in getting those resources. to Ukraine. So those would be the two easiest ways without going through international banking issues. Okay.
The next one is, have these bomb shelters all been constructed recently?
That's a really good question. Some of the buildings in the country are new, and every new building has a bomb shelter. Some of the very old buildings were built that way back during the world wars. Unfortunately, Ukraine has been in wars often, and so I think many of these bomb shelters were constructed at the hundreds of years ago. They're pretty well outfitted now. They have everything that you'd need to live on. They have stores of water. They have restroom facilities. There are generators down there. So people know that they can be as shielded as possible. Right now there's a lot of missile barrages coming in from the Black Sea and from Belarus. There's also, and this is interesting for you to know, there is most Ukrainians on their cell phones have an app that tells you where the missile was sent from, how long you have to take shelter before it hits. So you know, if it was shot from the Black Sea, you've got 28 minutes. If it was shot from Belarus into Lviv, you've got 15 minutes. If depending on where you are, and so you know when you need to get moving. Some of them are guided missiles, so they change direction. And all of those things are showing up on their phone apps, so they know how to put themselves into a safe situation. So I got the app on my phone and followed right along during the situation.
Thank you. So the next one here is, I noticed a lot of Christmas trees there. Are they still celebrating Christmas?
Yes, in the Eastern Church, the season doesn't end until right about now. But interestingly, the patriarch of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church has changed the date of the celebration of Christmas to disconnect it from the Russian Orthodox Christmas. So starting next year, Christmas will be on December 25th with the Western world. And they think that they don't want to be associated with Russia and Christmas. So that was that just had happened. It was just announced when we got there, and everybody was thrilled that they no longer had to celebrate with the Russians.
You noted they are resilient. Have they maintained hope?
Yes, I would say yes, they have. And I think the reason that they have is they know that people all over the world are standing with them. And that standing with them has buoyed them up and helped them to stay hopeful in the midst of this horrendous tragedy. I don't know how they do it. I do not know, but they are amazing.
Yeah. I just want to quickly add in, when I was there, I thought the same thing with the resiliency and just how amazing it was. It kind of, I don't know if this is how you felt, sister, it kind of gave me the feeling after 9/11, a little bit of just everybody coming together and being so supportive of one another. And then somebody asks, will you be returning again? And what is the spirit of the people? I think you kind of addressed that, but will you be returning again?
Well, I'd be returning again. Well, they want me to, but I have to tell you, it was a pretty brutal trip. And I would love to be able to, but I have to tell you that the travel itself was pretty extreme, because right now there's no airport open for commercial flying into Ukraine. I think if the airports opened if this settles down, and the airport actually opened in Lviv, where you could take a direct flight from JFK to Lviv, that I might go back, but not in the middle of this. it's just it's too difficult, and they understand that. Yeah.
Somebody asks, we keep hearing about the depletion of the Russian soldiers. What is happening to the Ukrainian soldiers? Is there a concern that they will not have enough to continue the fight?
A lot of people expressed that, but I would say it's not dwelled upon in the common parlance. The Ukrainians certainly are suffering losses, but not as many as the Russians. The Ukrainians are pretty well trained, but many, I mean, the funerals are there are hundreds of them, and the pastoral side of that, you can imagine that when these priests are celebrating these funerals, they're preparing for the funeral, they're celebrating the funeral, they're doing the month's mind of the funeral, where they care for the families, the 1 month anniversary, then the 1 year anniversary. So the entire country is in a perpetual state of mourning, and the priests are exhausted. You know, I'm amazed that they can continue, but they do.
And so that does it with the questions, but somebody sent in a comment that I wanted to read that we think is appropriate here to end it. Not a question, just a big thank you to Sister Donna for not only standing in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, but for sharing your experience with the CCUSA network. I think that pretty much sums it up from all of us.
I'm happy that I could do that, and I thank all of you, and I appreciate your understanding that it is very emotionally difficult to recount some of this repeatedly. So I'm grateful to my team for figuring out a way for us to record this and then put a link out so people can actually hear about it. So I thank everybody who jumped on this Zoom today, and just keep praying hard for them. Okay. So blessings to everybody. Bye-bye.